Your Honor, she is a drug dealer. I pulled the bag out of her trunk myself. Detective, lower your voice. 2 kilos, Your Honor. Her kind runs poison through this county and then smiles about it in court.
Miss Bennett, does the defense have anything to say?
Only one thing, Your Honor. He is under oath.
Is that supposed to scare me, sweetheart? You are the one in handcuffs.
It is arithmetic, Detective. Every lie you tell up there today is one more year. Keep counting.
Those courtroom doors are about to open, so comment where you are watching from. Drop a like before they do. And let me take you back to where this started. 3 days earlier, the trial of Danielle Bennett opened to a full house. The case was the biggest thing Ridgeline County had seen in years. 2 kilos of cocaine in a routine traffic stop. A woman with no job, no story, and no bail. The local paper ran her booking photo above the fold with the headline, "Queen of the Corridor," and nobody asked who had crowned her. The gallery filled by 8 each morning. Retirees with thermoses, a podcast producer, 2 teachers grading papers between witnesses. Justice in Ridgeline County was the best show in town, and this season had a villainess. Strangers who had never met Danielle Bennett hated her efficiently. The way people hate whatever saves them, the work of thinking. The state's star witness owned the room from the moment he raised his right hand. Detective Grant Mercer, 16 years on the force. 9 of them running the county's narcotics unit. Square jaw, pressed uniform. 2 commendation ribbons. He touched exactly once, so the jury would notice without being told. He swore to tell the truth. The whole truth. And nothing but the truth. And then he sat down and did the other thing. Walk us through that night. Detective, said Paul Whitaker, the assistant district attorney, a young man with ambitions and a haircut that traveled well on camera. Routine patrol on the Route 9 corridor. I observed a vehicle with a broken taillight. Weaving, initiated a stop. Mercer's voice was gravel and authority. Built for juries. Driver seemed nervous. Sweating. Wouldn't look at me. I have 16 years of instincts, and every one of them started talking at once. What happened next? I asked to search the vehicle. She consented, verbally, in the trunk. Under a blanket. I located a gray duffel bag containing 2 kilograms of a white substance that field tested positive for cocaine. The jury looked at the duffel on the evidence table, then at the woman at the defense desk, and did the math the way they had been invited to. And the defendant's demeanor, cold. Mercer, let the word sit. Most people cry, beg, make calls. She just watched me, like she was taking notes. Then she offered me $10,000, cash, to lose the bag. A murmur crossed the gallery. In row 2, an old woman in her church coat gripped a worn pillbox until her knuckles paled. Lorraine Bennett had raised the defendant above a diner on 4th Street, and she had not missed a single hour of a trial that was killing her. One polished lie at a time. At the defense table, Danielle Bennett wrote one line on a yellow legal pad. In small, square letters. He is improvising the bribe. Note the time. Her attorney? A quiet woman named Susan Hartley, who had appeared out of nowhere 8 months ago and refused all payment. Read the line. Capped her pen. And did not object. Objecting was not the plan. Here is what actually happened on the Route 9 corridor that night. 8 months before, in the rain, The taillight was not broken. It would be broken later. In the impound lot. With a baton. The car was not weaving. Danielle had held it 2 miles under the limit for 6 miles. Because she had spotted the unmarked cruiser at the gas station, and a colder thought had spotted her back. They know. Mercer had not walked to her window first. He had walked to his own trunk first. In her side mirror, through the rain. She had watched him shoulder a gray duffel bag, and she had understood. With the calm of a woman doing arithmetic at a funeral, exactly how the next year of her life was going to go. License, he had said. Flashlight in her eyes. Officer, is there a reason for this stop? The reason is, I said so. The light traveled over her. Slow. Insolent. Working girl like you. Driving cash all over my county. You people think we don't see the pattern. Step out. There had been no consent. There had been a hand on her collar and gravel against her palms. Rain found the back of her neck while the cuffs went on wet. And somewhere, above the pumps, across the road, a camera nobody remembered looked down from the gas station, awning. Patient as God, there had been a second officer, younger, standing in the rain by the cruiser, holding the radio, not looking at her, his jaw working like a man rehearsing an apology he would never send. Cody Lang had said only one sentence that night, quietly. When the duffel came out of the trunk that had been empty at the car wash 40 minutes earlier. Grant, you sure about this one? Write it up. Mercer had said, make it heavy. 8 months. That is how long Ridgeline County had held Danielle Bennett without bail. Flight risk. The prosecutor argued, no verifiable employment. No family except one old woman with a diner and a pillbox. The jumpsuit they issued her was orange, a size too big, and she had rolled the cuffs with the neatness of a person who refused to look like what they wanted her to look like. She had spent the 8 months the way other inmates spent cigarettes. Carefully, she taught 2 women to read. She memorized the guards' rotations out of habit. She did push-ups at 5 in the morning and wrote letters to her grandmother about the food. And every single night, in the dark, she walked through a filing cabinet that existed only inside her skull, drawer by drawer, so nothing would rust, because Danielle Bennett had a case to keep alive. And she was the only place it could live. Back in the courtroom, Whitaker was wrapping his witness in ribbon. Detective. The defense will suggest you had never met the defendant before that night. Had you? Everyone in narcotics knew of her. Mercer looked straight at the jury. 16 years of practice in the gaze. She ran cash for the corridor. We just could never touch her. She was careful. Smartest dealer I ever stopped. He smiled. Generous. A hunter complimenting the deer. Not smart enough. No further questions. The judge glanced at the clock and adjourned for the day. The jurors filed out past the defense table, and not one of them looked at the woman in orange, because you do not look at furniture. Mercer stepped down from the stand and buttoned his jacket. On his way up the aisle, he paused at the defense table. Leaned in close. Close enough that only she and the bailiff could hear, and patted the rail twice, like a man soothing a horse he intended to put down. Enjoy the cage. Sweetheart, he said, I hear federal prison has a pool. Danielle did not look up from her legal pad. She underlined one word. Slowly. And if Mercer had bothered to read it upside down, the whole performance might have ended right there. The word was oath. That night, Grant Mercer bought a round for half the precinct at a bar called the Brass Rail and told the story of the smartest dealer he ever stopped. And across town, in a cruiser, parked outside a storage unit he had rented in his cousin's name, Officer Cody Lang sat with the engine off, staring at a flash drive in his palm like it was a live round, listening to the rain, deciding absolutely nothing. 8 months of nothing. But upstairs in the county jail, on a cot built for someone shorter, the woman in orange lay with her eyes open, running through her filing cabinet one more time. And on the drawer, marked Mercer, Grant, Badge 2, 814. She added the evening's inventory in neat mental ink. Perjury. Count. 1. The taillight. Perjury. Count. 2. The consent. Perjury. Count. 3. The bribe. Or keep talking. Detective, she thought, and almost smiled at the ceiling. You are building my case faster than I ever could. On the second day, against the advice of every sane lawyer in America, the defendant took the stand. Whitaker could not believe his luck. A drug dealer with no alibi, volunteering for cross-examination. He sharpened his questions overnight and came in swinging. Miss Bennett, what do you do for a living? I solve problems. Could you be more specific? Not yet. A ripple of laughter. The unkind sort. Whitaker smiled with the room. You understand how that sounds. No employer. No tax returns under your name for the past 6 years. Cash deposits. A car registered to a shell company in another state. That is the resume of a criminal. Miss Bennett. It is also the resume of some other professions. She said, give it time. Judge Marsh looked up from his notes. Something in the phrasing bothered him. The way a familiar tune bothers a man who cannot name it. Time. Whitaker repeated. Dry. You are facing 20 years. And your defense is? Give it time. My defense is the truth. Counselor, it is just still in line at the door. The gallery laughed again. And this time, some of the laughter changed sides. In the jury box, an older juror in a cardigan narrowed her eyes at the woman in orange. Not hostile anymore. Curious. Whitaker changed lanes. Walk us through the stop. Then, your version. And Danielle Bennett did something no witness had done in the history of Ridgeline County. She recited it. At 9:12 in the evening, I passed the Fastway station on Route 9, eastbound. Detective Mercer's unmarked cruiser, County Plate 4162, was parked nose out beside the air pump with its lights off. At 9:14, he pulled out behind me and followed for 6.2 miles without initiating a stop. At 9:20, he activated his lights. At 9:21, I came to a stop on the gravel shoulder, past mile marker 11. At 9:23, before making any contact with me, he opened his own trunk. I watched him in my side mirror shoulder a gray duffel bag. At 9:26, I was removed from the vehicle by my collar. At no point was I asked for consent to search. And at no point did I give it. The courtroom had gone very quiet. Court reporters type at a certain rhythm, and hers had slowed. The way people slow down to make sure. That is a lovely story. Whitaker said, you expect this jury to believe you memorized 6 minutes of your life to the second. 8 months ago, in the rain. Yes. Why on earth would they believe that? Because memory is my job. You said you have no job. Danielle looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at Mercer, sitting in the third row with his arms crossed. And something in her stillness made his arms uncross themselves. Ask me again tomorrow, she said. Judge Marsh tapped his gavel at the murmur that followed, but he tapped it gently, like a man who did not actually want the sound in the room to stop. 20 years on the bench teaches you the taste of a script going off its rails. He made a small note on his pad. The note said, 4162. And next to it, a question mark. Whitaker regrouped and went for blood. Let us talk about the $10,000 you offered Detective Mercer. The bribe he remembered yesterday at 3:14 in the afternoon. She said it mildly. It was not in his arrest report. It was not in his supplemental report. It was not in his grand jury testimony. It arrived in this courtroom fully grown, 8 months after the fact. In front of you and this jury, you might ask him where it was living all that time. Objection, Whitaker said, to his own witness examination, and heard the room notice. He cleared his throat. Move to strike, you asked. Judge Marsh said. She answered. Overruled. At the prosecution table, Whitaker's paralegal quietly slid the arrest report out of a folder and began to read it with a highlighter. In row 2, Lorraine Bennett stopped gripping the pillbox quite so hard. And in the back row, Officer Cody Lang, who was not scheduled to be there, sat in street clothes with his radio in his jacket pocket, dead weight against his ribs. He kept hearing it. 9:23. He opened his own trunk. Lang had written the time in his own notebook that night, not in the report. In the notebook that lived in the same storage unit as the flash drive, he had written 9:23 because that was the truth. And then he had signed a report that said something else. And for 8 months, he had told himself that a signature is just ink. The woman in orange had carried the truth to the second. He had carried it to a storage unit. Final question. Whitaker straightened his jacket. Going for the exit wound. If you are so innocent, Miss Bennett, so precise, so professional, then tell this jury plainly. Who do you work for? The courtroom leaned in. The court reporter's hands hovered. Daniel Bennett folded her hands, the chain between her wrists making one soft sound against the rail, and gave the jury a small, courteous nod, like a chess player accepting a resignation that had not been offered yet. I am not permitted to answer that question yet, counselor, but you are going to want to sit down when I do. Judge Marsh adjourned for the day, and nobody in the gallery went home. They stood on the courthouse steps in the cold, replaying her timeline, asking each other the question that would go around the county twice by morning. What kind of drug dealer talks like a deposition? That night, in the county jail, Danielle lay on her cot and allowed herself 60 seconds of something dangerously close to hope. Tomorrow was the last day of testimony. Tomorrow, Susan Hartley would stand up and stop not objecting. And in a storage unit across town at 11:40 at night, a combination lock spun 3 times in the dark, and Officer Cody Lang stood in the doorway with a flashlight between his teeth, looking at a shoebox he had labeled, with a cop's sense of poetry, insurance. He took the flash drive out. He put it in his pocket. He stood there for 19 more minutes. Then he took out his phone, scrolled to a number he had saved under a fake name 8 months ago and never once dialed, and typed 4 words he could not unsend. If she testifies tomorrow, delete, retype, send. If the truth needs help. To understand what was about to happen in that courtroom, you have to go back 34 years, to a diner on 4th Street with a jukebox that only played the B-sides. Danielle Bennett grew up in the apartment above it, raised by a grandmother who worked the grill. Lorraine Bennett had 2 rules in her kitchen. Everybody eats, and nobody lies. She kept a thin gold watch above the register, her late husband's. 19 minutes fast. And when little Danielle asked why nobody ever fixed it, Lorraine said the sentence that would end up steering a life. Time tells the truth. Baby, You just have to let it run. Danielle let it run all the way through a state college scholarship, a criminal justice degree, and an application to the Federal Bureau of Investigation that she mailed without telling anyone except the watch. At Quantico, she broke no records and made no enemies. Her instructors wrote the same phrase in 3 different evaluations. Notices everything. Rattles never. 9 years later, she was one of the Civil Rights Division's most trusted undercover specialists. And a letter arrived that had been forwarded 4 times before it found the right desk. It came from a pastor in Ridgeline County. 3 handwritten pages naming 11 men from his congregation who had been arrested on the same road, by the same unit, with the same gray duffel bag appearing in their trunks like a magic trick. Every complaint had died in the same drawer. Every public defender had advised the same plea. The letter ended with a sentence that Danielle would keep folded in her wallet for 14 months. We are not asking you to believe us. We are asking you to count. The Bureau counted. The pattern ran back 6 years and 31 cases. 31 convictions built on the testimony of Detective Grant Mercer, and a narcotics unit that closed cases like a casino wins money. Steadily. And always with the house edge. Operation Ridgeline was opened quietly, and Special Agent Danielle Bennett volunteered before her supervisor finished the briefing slide. For 14 months, she was a ghost with a cover story. A cash courier for businesses that preferred not to explain themselves. She drove the corridor, let the unit notice her, then wonder, then hunger, building their file on a fiction while she built hers on facts. Names, dates, radio, a B. The way evidence moved, the way it sometimes moved before the arrest, it belonged to. She was 4 weeks from closing when something spooked them. A records request on the wrong screen. A clerk who talked. Nobody ever learned which. What matters is that on a rainy Tuesday night, the unit decided the mysterious courier needed to stop existing. And Grant Mercer went to his trunk before he went to her window. In the booking room, soaked and printed and photographed, Danielle Bennett was allowed 1 phone call. It lasted 11 seconds. Hair handler, supervisory agent Victor Sloan, answered on the first ring, already reading the arrest alert, already furious, already reaching for the extraction that would burn 14 months, but save her from a cage. She said 5 words. Let it run. I'm fine. He argued. Of course he argued. And she stood with rain still in her shoes and explained, in the flat calm that rattled never. The arithmetic Ridgeline County had never once done. Complaints die in drawers. Internal reviews die in committees. But perjury. In open court. Under oath. On the record. In front of 12 citizens and a judge. With the whole county watching. Does not D. It gets a docket number. To catch a man who lies for a living, you do not stop him from lying. You give him a witness stand, and you let him build the federal case himself. 1 confident sentence at a time. The Bureau ran it up to the top floor. The Department of Justice signed off with conditions nobody liked. A civil rights trial attorney named Susan Hartley took a leave of absence, drove to Ridgeline County, and became the cheapest defense lawyer in the state. And a filing cabinet moved into the skull of a woman in an orange jumpsuit, where no search warrant in the world could reach it. 8 months, 240 days in a cage, on purpose. On the morning of the last day of testimony, Victor Sloan stood in a rest area off Route 9 beside 4 black SUVs and a federal van, watching his phone. The message he was waiting for was 1 word long. Hartley would send it the moment the door could no longer be shut. At 8:40, his phone buzzed. It was not Hartley's number. It was one saved 8 months ago from an anonymous tip line. A number belonging to a young officer whose conscience had finally yelled his fear. If the truth needs help, the message read, "I have his body cam. The real one." Sloan read it twice. Then he looked up at the courthouse flag on the hill and said the only prayer federal agents are issued. All right. Everybody talks today. By the last day of testimony, the line for the gallery ran down the courthouse steps and past the war memorial. Word had gotten out about the defendant, who talked like a deposition, and Ridgeline County came to watch the ending it had already written. Mercer's unit filled row 3 in dress uniforms. A wall of Navy confidence. In row 2, Lorraine Bennett sat in her church coat and on her thin wrist. For the first time since her husband died, she wore the gold watch from above the register, 19 minutes fast, letting it run. The session began with Susan Hartley rising from the defense table, buttoning her plain gray jacket, and politely detonating the county's case. Your Honor, the defense recalls Detective Grant Mercer. Mercer strolled back to the stand like a man returning to his favorite chair. He winked at a deputy on the way. He was still under oath. The judge reminded him. He said he understood. He did not understand anything yet. Detective, you testified that your dashboard camera was not functioning on the night of the arrest. Hartley began. Is that correct? Equipment fails. It happens. It does. Hartley lifted a thin folder. Defense Exhibit 12. Maintenance records for your assigned vehicle. Subpoenaed from the county garage. Your dashboard camera was inspected and certified functional 11 days before the arrest. It was reported failed by you. Personally, on 6 occasions over the past 6 years. She looked up. Would you like to hear the dates? Not particularly. A little laughter from the gallery. Mercer smiled at them. His base? March 11th. 4 years ago. The arrest of Terrence Whitlock. August 2nd. 3 years ago. The arrest of Jerome Baxter. February 9th. She read all 6, unhurried, and the laughter thinned as she read, because 4 of the 6 names were sitting in the gallery in their church clothes. And one by one, as their names sounded, they stood up. They did not say a word. They just stood. Big men. Old men. A groundskeeper still in his work boots, standing silently in rows like a jury that had arrived a few years late. Objection. Whitaker was on his feet. Relevance. Pattern of practice. Your Honor. Overruled. Judge Marsh had stopped writing. Continue. Detective. Hartley walked back to her table. Your camera failed 6 times. And each failure coincided with an arrest in which the defendant claimed evidence was planted. Are we to understand that as a coincidence? I don't schedule equipment failures. Ma'am, his voice had found an edge. And I don't take arithmetic lessons from defense lawyers. At the prosecution table, Whitaker did not object. His paralegal's copy of the arrest report lay in front of him. Dog-eared and striped yellow. And he was reading it the way a man reads a lease after the flood. In the jury box, the juror in the cardigan had started taking notes of her own. Then let us try geometry. Hartley nodded to the clerk, and a screen lit up beside the jury box. Defense Exhibit 13. Security footage from the Fastway station on Route 9. Camera 4. The awning camera. Recovered from the station's cloud storage archive. The station owner believed his system was broken. It was not. Only the sign was. The lights dimmed a little, and there it was, in gray and white. Time-stamped. Silent. The cruiser, nose out beside the air pump. 9:12. Hear sedan passing. The cruiser easing out after it. 9:14. The camera's edge caught the shoulder of the road beyond the pumps. And at 9:23, at the limit of its vision, but inside the limit of doubt, it caught a big man in the rain, opening the trunk of his own cruiser and lifting out a gray duffel bag. The courtroom made a sound like a building settling. The jury watched the man carry the bag toward the stopped sedan. They watched the timestamp roll. They looked, all 12 of them at once, at the witness stand. In the gallery, the 6 standing men did not move, but something moved through them. They were watching their own nights on that screen. Different roads, different rain, the same walk from the same trunk. One of them, the groundskeeper, put his fist against his mouth. A juror covered hers. In row 3, the wall of Navy confidence had stopped being a wall and become 6 separate men doing arithmetic about their own reports. Lorraine Bennett pressed the gold watch flat against her heart and let it tick. That is evidence transfer. Mercer's voice came out too fast. We move equipment between vehicles all the time. That bag could be anything. Cones, flares, cones. Hartley repeated, "You cannot see what is in that bag on that footage. And neither can this jury." That is true. Detective. The bag on the footage is just a bag. She let it breathe. Then let us weigh a different one. Defense Exhibit 14. The evidence intake log from the county lab. Subpoenaed Tuesday. She read slowly. Gray duffel. 2 kilograms. Logged into the evidence system by Detective Grant Mercer at 9:04 that evening. She looked up. Your arrest report states you discovered the bag at 9:26. Detective, walk this jury through how you logged evidence into the system 19 minutes before you claim to have found it. Silence has a weight in a courtroom. This one bent the benches. That is a clerical error. Mercer said. Whose clerical error? The lab's timestamp is generated automatically by the barcode scanner in your cruiser. Detective, your scanner, your login, your badge number. Each sentence, a nail. Did the machine commit perjury too? Objection Whitaker again. But softer. The sound of a man objecting to the direction of the wind. Withdrawn, Hartley squared her folder and walked to the center of the well. Unhurried. Mercer's eyes went to Whitaker and found the top of his head. They went to row 3 and found 6 pairs of eyes studying the carpet. 16 years of rooms leaning his way. And this one had quietly changed sides while he was talking. Detective Mercer, I will offer you one exit. It is the last one on this highway. Did you place that duffel bag in Danielle Bennett's trunk on the night of her arrest? The room hung. 12 jurors leaned in the back row. Cody Lang's hand was pressed flat against his jacket pocket. Over the flash drive, like a man holding his own heart in. And Grant Mercer. 16 years of juries, believing every word. Looked at the woman in the orange jumpsuit. Remembered every case that had gone exactly the way he wrote it. And chose, one last time, under oath, on the record, in front of God and the county in camera 4, to be Grant Mercer. I have never planted evidence in my life, he said, slow and loud. Not on her, not on anyone. Everything I have testified to in this courtroom is the truth. She is a drug dealer, and half this county knows her name. From the defense table, calm as a metronome, came a voice. He is right about the last part. Your Honor, half this county does know my name. Danielle Bennett rose. Chain clinking softly against the table rail, and looked at her attorney. The other half is parked outside. Hartley turned to the bench. Your Honor, At this time, the defense calls its final witness, the defendant, and pursuant to a matter of federal jurisdiction that will become clear in approximately 90 seconds, I would respectfully ask the bailiff to unlock the rear doors. Judge Marsh, 20 years on that bench, looked from the lawyer to the defendant to the 6 standing men in their church clothes, and made the best decision of his career. Unlock them. The rear doors of courtroom 4 opened at 10:51 in the morning, and the temperature of Ridgeline County changed for good. They came in 2 columns, quiet as snowfall, dark suits, laminated credentials hanging from breast pockets, wires curling behind ears. 8 of them lined the back wall and did not say one word. Supervisory Agent Victor Sloan walked the center aisle alone, past the podcast producer whose hands had gone slack around her microphone, past row 3, where 6 dress uniforms had just stopped breathing, and stopped at the bar with a folded document in his hand. Your Honor, Victor Sloan, Federal Bureau of Investigation. I apologize for the theater. It could not be avoided. Judge Marsh looked at the credentials held up for his inspection, then at the paper, and this, an order from the United States District Court, unsealing a federal matter that touches this trial. Sloan's voice carried to the corners. Your Honor, the defense may want to restate its last question. Marsh read the order twice. Something moved through his face. 20 years of poker collapsing into one long exhale. He set the paper down flat, smoothed it with both hands, and looked at the woman in orange standing at the defense table. Miss Bennett, he said slowly, the court is going to ask you the question the prosecution asked you yesterday. Who do you work for? Answer him. Sloan said quietly. You are cleared. Danielle Bennett straightened her spine inside a jumpsuit, one size too big. The chain between her wrists rang once against the rail, the last sound it would ever make in public, and she gave her answer to the 12 citizens in the box, because they were the ones who had been lied to longest. My name is Daniel Marie Bennett. I am a special agent of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, assigned to the Civil Rights Division. For the past 14 months, I have been the lead undercover investigator of Operation Ridgeline, a federal inquiry into evidence tampering, false testimony, and civil rights violations by members of this county's narcotics unit. She paused and turned her head and looked at the witness stand with the patience of 8 months. The primary subject of that investigation is seated in this courtroom. He is wearing his dress uniform. His name is Detective Grant Mercer. And this morning, under oath, he answered my case for me. For 1 full second, nothing. The county needed the second to catch up. Then, courtroom 4 detonated, gallery on its feet, the podcast producer knocking over her coffee, a juror saying, "Oh my God," directly into the silence where the gavel should have been, because Judge Marsh was not reaching for the gavel. He was watching Grant Mercer's face with the expression of a man doing his own arithmetic. 16 years of guilty verdicts recalculating themselves in real time. Mercer had gone the color of courthouse marble. He stood up in the witness box, which is a thing you do not do, and pointed at her. And the finger that had owned the room 3 days ago was shaking. She's lying. This is... Your Honor, this is insane. She is a drug dealer. I found the bag. There is no way she is, Detective. Judge Marsh did not raise his voice. It cut anyway. Sit down. The bailiff crossed the well of courtroom 4, and every camera phone that had not been confiscated caught what happened next. The 11 seconds that would lead every broadcast in America by nightfall. He did not go to the witness stand. He went to the defense table. He took out his key, and he unlocked the handcuffs of the defendant, Daniela Bennett. In open court, while the man who had put them on her watched from the stand in his dress blues, she rubbed her wrists once. Without drama, the habit of a woman who had been rubbing them for 8 months. Then she rolled the orange cuffs of her sleeves back down, smoothed them flat, and stood at ease. If you saw the footage, and the country saw the footage, you know there was no gloating in her face. There was only the stillness of a person setting down something heavy at the end of a very long driveway. Lorraine Bennett was crying into the gold watch with both hands over her mouth. And at the back of the courtroom, unnoticed by almost everyone, a young officer in street clothes rose from the last row, walked to the bar on legs that had finally made a decision, and set 2 objects down in front of Susan Hartley. Gently, like offerings, a flash drive, and a police radio. "Officer Cody Lang," he said. To her, to the judge, to the room, to the recording that would be played at 2 trials. Ridgeline Narcotics. I was on the Route 9 corridor that night. I have been carrying the truth in a storage unit for 8 months. His voice cracked in the middle, and he let it. I would like to stop carrying it now. What happened next took 40 minutes, and Ridgeline County will be studying it for 40 years. Judge Marsh did not clear the courtroom. He said, on the record, that the county had watched this case begin in the dark and it would watch it end in the light. Then he granted the federal motion, recessed the jury with an apology, and allowed Susan Hartley, now formally appearing as trial attorney for the United States Department of Justice, to do the thing she had spent 8 months not doing. Object to everything. Cody Lang's flash drive went up on the screen where the gas station footage had played. His body cam, the one the reports said did not exist. From an angle the unit never controlled, rain on the lens, the trunk of the cruiser opening, the gray duffel on Mercer's shoulder, and this time, sound. Grant. You sure about this one? Write it up. Make it heavy. The recording hit the courtroom like weather. On the stand, Grant Mercer listened to his own voice, order the manufacturing of a human being's guilt, and the room watched him age. Hartley approached the witness stand, unhurried as ever. Detective, 90 minutes ago you testified, under oath, that you have never planted evidence in your life. Do you wish to revise that statement? Mercer's lawyer had materialized from somewhere. A man in a good suit whispering urgently. Mercer leaned back from the microphone and said the 5 words that ended 16 years. I decline to answer that. On what grounds? On the advice of counsel. 5th Amendment. Very well. Hartley walked to her table and lifted a single sheet of paper. It looked light. Everyone in the courtroom could see that it was not detective. I am going to read you a list of names. You may decline each one individually. The county deserves the arithmetic. She read them the way you read names at a memorial. Terrence Whitlock. Did you plant evidence in his vehicle? I decline to answer. In the gallery, a woman stood up. Whitlock's widow. She did not shout. She just stood. The way the 6 men had stood. Jerome Baxter. Did you plant evidence in his vehicle? I decline to answer. Baxter stood himself. Work boots planted. Chin up. 8 years of a ruined name squared away in his shoulders. Name after name. Decline after decline. By the 12th name, the whole left side of the gallery was on its feet. Husbands and mothers, and one very old man holding a photograph. 31 cases, standing up in a courtroom that had sat them down one at a time, over 6 years. Nobody wept loudly. This was quieter and heavier than weeping. It was a county watching its own history get read into a microphone by a woman in a gray suit who never once raised her voice. Judge Marsh let every name land. When Hartley reached the end of the page, he took off his glasses, rubbed the bridge of his nose, and spoke into the stillness. How many of those cases, counselor, resulted in convictions in this courthouse? All of them. Your Honor, 6 of them in this courtroom. The judge looked at the standing gallery for a long moment. Then he did something no one present had ever seen. He stood up behind the bench. An old man in a black robe rising. For the people, his courthouse had failed. And he stayed standing while he said it. Detective Grant Mercer, you came into my courtroom for 6 years, and I believed you. That is my weight to carry. And I will carry it. But you will not walk out of this building the way you walked in. He nodded once. Past the witness stand. Marshals. They came from the back wall. 2 of them. Unhurried. And at 11:46 in the morning, in front of the jury box he had performed for since he was a rookie. Detective Grant Mercer was taken into federal custody for perjury, evidence tampering, and the deprivation of civil rights under color of law. They cuffed him at the witness stand. The cuffs made the same sound hers had made for 8 months. He looked for help on his way up the aisle. He looked at Whitaker, who was staring at a legal pad with nothing written on it. He looked at row 3, at his unit, and found 6 men who had already begun composing their own confessions in their heads. He looked, last of all, at the woman in orange standing beside the defense table, because even now, even here, he needed her to be what he had written. Danielle Bennett looked back at him with no triumph at all, and gave him the only sentence she would ever spend on him. For the record, Detective, the bag was heavy. The state of Ridgeline County versus Danielle Bennett ended that same afternoon, and it ended the only way arithmetic allows. Paul Whitaker rose, buttoned his jacket with hands that were not quite steady, and moved to dismiss all charges with prejudice. He chose his words carefully, because his words were being recorded, and because a young man with ambitions was watching those ambitions leave the building in a marshal's van. To his small credit, he added one sentence that was not required. The people apologized to the defendant. Judge Marsh granted the motion in 9 seconds, but he did not bang the gavel yet, because he had a sentence of his own to say, and he had been drafting it through the lunch recess with the door of his chambers locked. Miss Bennett, Agent Bennett, he said the correction slowly, like a man relearning a word. You sat in my county's jail for 8 months for a crime that was manufactured 20 feet from where you now stand. You watched this court treat a lie like granite and treat you like weather, and you trusted the law to correct itself, longer and at greater cost than the law had any right to ask of you. He paused. This court failed you before it found you. That will be on the record forever, because it should be. He looked at the gallery, at the 31 families, to the others. The ones this bench sentenced on the word of a man in handcuffs today. The machinery of your relief begins this afternoon, and I will personally sign every order it produces. If it takes me the rest of my career, he lifted the gavel, then set it down gently, as if it had gotten heavier. We are adjourned. Danielle Bennett walked out of courtroom 4 at 3 in the afternoon in a borrowed FBI windbreaker. Past the cameras, past the shouted questions, down the marble steps her grandmother had climbed alone for 8 months. Lorraine was waiting at the bottom, small and straight in her church coat. The country watched the hug on every network that evening. Neither woman said anything the microphones could catch, but Lorraine took off the gold watch, the one 19 minutes fast for 30 years, and fastened it on her granddaughter's wrist. Over the pale band of skin the handcuffs had left, Some inheritances wait for a funeral. This one had waited for a verdict. By nightfall, the 11 seconds of the uncuffing led every broadcast in the country. And the courtroom audio of a calm voice saying the bag was heavy became the most replayed clip of the year. The podcast producer's series about the trial went to #1 in a week. She called it Let It Run. The federal trial of Grant Mercer took place 5 months later, 90 miles away, in front of a jury that had never heard of the Route 9 corridor. It took 11 days. The gas station footage played. The intake log with its impossible 19 minutes played. Cody Lang testified for a day and a half. Voice steady. Career finished by his own choosing. And when the defense called him a traitor to the badge, he leaned into the microphone and gave the trial its most quoted line. "I didn't betray the badge. I finally caught up to it." He never wore a badge again, by his own choice. He teaches 1 seminar a year at the academy now. Ethics. First Friday of October. He opens it the same way every time, with a photograph of a storage unit door. Grant Mercer was convicted on all federal counts: perjury, falsification of records, deprivation of rights under color of law. 31 counts, one for every name on Hartley's list. The judge, a stranger with no history to apologize for, gave him 11 years in federal prison and a lifetime ban from any position of public trust, and noted for the record that the defendant had shown the court 16 years of practice and not 1 minute of remorse. The convictions he had built began to fall the same season. Review teams worked through the 31 cases in 14 months. 29 were vacated outright. 2 were retried honestly and dismissed. The county settlement that followed was the largest in state history. And the papers ran photographs that nobody who saw them will forget. Jerome Baxter, walking out of the state facility into his daughter's arms after 8 years. The groundskeeper kneeling at his mother's headstone. Free, too late to tell her. An old man in a rocking chair holding an envelope with a seal on it. The word exonerated, visible through his fingers. Whitaker resigned in the spring. The narcotics unit was dissolved by unanimous county vote. Its remaining members scattered into testimony and plea agreements. And on the wall of the rebuilt evidence room, the county installed a small brass plate that new officers are shown on their first day. It reads, "Every bag gets weighed twice. Vanity is a strange thing." Grant Mercer had wanted to be famous in Ridgeline County, and he got his wish. His name is taught there now. It is just taught the way lighthouses teach rocks. And Special Agent Danielle Bennett, who could have written her own posting anywhere in the Bureau after the most celebrated undercover operation in the division's history, requested the one assignment nobody expected. She asked for the complaint desk, civil rights intake, the drawer where letters go to die, because somewhere out there, in some other county, a pastor was writing 3 pages by hand. And this time, somebody precise was going to be there to count. On a Sunday morning, 1 year later, the bell over the door of the 4th Street Meeting rings at 7 sharp, as it has for 40 years. The jukebox still only plays the B-sides. The coffee is still strong enough to argue with. Lorraine Bennett still runs the grill 2 mornings a week. Because retirement, she says, is for people who dislike their own pancakes. Above the register, where a gold watch hung for 3 decades, there is now a small framed photograph instead. A woman in an orange jumpsuit, standing perfectly straight at a defense table. Customers think it is odd decoration. The regulars know it is a trophy case. The woman from the photograph sits in the corner booth most Sundays, in jeans and an old college sweatshirt, with coffee and a manila folder of letters. Complaint desk mail. The drawer where letters used to go to die. She reads each one twice, pen in hand, and on her wrist, a thin gold watch ticks 19 minutes ahead of the world. Exactly where the truth likes to run. Some Sundays, Jerome Baxter brings his daughter for waffles. Some Sundays, a retired judge drives 40 minutes for eggs. Because in this booth, nobody calls him Your Honor. And one fall morning, a pastor walked in with 3 handwritten pages from a county 2 states over and slid them across her table without a word. Danielle read them twice. Then she looked up and said the sentence that started everything. Given back at last. You are not asking me to believe you. You are asking me to count. The old man's eyes filled. They told me nobody reads those letters. Somebody does now, she said. Everybody eats. Nobody lies. Sit down. Reverend, breakfast is on the house. That is the whole ending. Quieter than the internet wanted. No parada. There was a medal in a box, in a drawer, next to a folded letter from a pastor, 3 pages long, kept the way other people keep photographs. Just Adina, a watch that runs ahead. A woman who spent 240 days inside a lie because she knew exactly how much the truth weighed. So, let me leave you with the question this county still argues about over coffee. Grant Mercer told 1,000 lies, and one finally met a witness who had been counting. If the truth cost you 8 months of your life, your name, and your grandmother's sleep, would you have let it run or taken the extraction? Tell me honestly in the comments, because I read every one of them. And if this story stayed with you, share it with somebody who thinks one voice cannot beat a badge. And subscribe, because stories like this one do not tell themselves. Real talk for a second, because this one got me. Everybody in that courtroom had a microphone. The cop had the loudest one, 16 whole years of everyone believing him on sight. And the person telling the truth had to sit in a cage for 8 months in an orange jumpsuit just to be heard for 11 seconds. Sit with that. The truth did not win because it was loud. It won because one stubborn woman refused to put it down, and one scared young cop finally picked his end of it up. Be either one of them, honestly. Just do not be the crowd that laughed. And hey, could you have stayed quiet for 240 days to win? Me? Not a chance. And that is exactly why I am telling her story.